whipsaw effect for crypto continues, and in today's show we'll have a look at when we could realistically expect some of the altcoins and the crypto market as a whole to properly rebound and possibly even move into all-time highs once again. Smash the like button, hit the bell notification, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. We'll get straight into it. You can see, looking at the Banter bubbles, which showcases the top 100 coins over here, that whipsaw effect is in action, right? Hourly's down, daily's up, weekly's down, and we continue to chop and bounce about, right? So there's a lot to look at. The emotions are very, very high within the market. At one point, bulls are euphoric again. The next moment, bears are euphoric and bulls are fearful. So we've settled somewhere in the middle, at least on this crypto fear and greed index at 54. We are in uncertain territory is the way that I would describe it. So that neutral territory to possibly even fearful, teetering on the two zones over there. The market's super uncertain. Nobody knows what to do. In today's show, we'll have a look at what some of the trigger plans can be for you going forward if you were to actually be looking to get into the market and take a trade, right? Supported by this as well. If you do go into the Whale Room Discord, by the way, we do post this daily. This is the institutional data from High-Block Capital as well as Trading Light, where you can see where all the institutional liquidation levels are and where big whales are targeting price to go next, right? So if you have a look at this over here, you can see again supporting that the market is uncertain and in that neutral territory, right? Flipping back to negative on the deltas. So just lining that up over here as well, you can see 24-hour liquidations, not that high, right? Why? Well, of course, the majority of the people have already been liquidated, both on the long and the short side. We saw, at least in nominal values, the highest liquidations ever, literally both on the long and the short side. So whether you were going long or short, you probably got wrecked over the last couple of days. And now you can see a massive drop off, right? And you look at the 24-hour liquidations. Well, the liquidation levels have dropped off by about 30%. So negative 30% over there. What this means is price is trying to find a fair value zone, right? It's trying to settle following that whipsaw effect. And sometimes what happens after that is you create these symmetrical triangles and you kind of like consolidate into a wedge, and then you start to see a big move coming from that afterwards, right? 24-hour volume also down significantly, down 28% over there. So keep that in the back of your mind. It is a little bit boring. It will become even more boring because I think we'll tighten up and consolidate even more, right? So one thing I am looking at though, in terms of what's happening on the high time frames and the macro, is the DXY, right? Because we may get our third red candle in a row, and this is possibly the first time that the DXY could actually be shifting trend. Remember, it's not always the case, but often the case that if the DXY is trending towards the downside with lower lows and lower highs, that helps the rest of the markets to move towards the upside, right? So it's kind of like that USDT dominance goes down, that money's flowing into crypto. If you see the DXY going down, it means the dollar is losing value sometimes because money is moving into other markets, right? So we need to see this level taken out. The good news is that you have essentially pushed up back into the golden pocket over here between the 0.618 and the 0.65, which is where price failed on this wick over here. You tested that one more time, rejected again. And now if you get that third red candle, it's going to increase the probability that you'll start to break this down. And if you do break this down, that could provide a little bit of relief, at least for the stock market, right? If the stock market moves towards the upside, right now, the S&P 500 has just been chopping about. If you see the DXY breaking down over here, then you might see the S&P 500 push up a little bit higher, possibly put in a bit of a stronger bounce over there. And that typically gets followed by Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin moves up, then we'll see the rest of the puzzle pieces fall together, right? So we're looking at the big trap scenario over here. Of course, as always in trading, there are two potential outcomes, actually even three, one down, one up, and one sideways. We need to side with where the probabilities are the highest. We have a big swing failure pattern over here in the form of this wick breaking back into the trading range. But that wick over there could be treated as a wick fill strategy. So I have highlighted where the 50% level comes in. That is at 4.67%. Now, there is a real possibility that you spike up there one more time to fill some of that inefficiency for then price to come back down. This is the most optimal route, and what you're probably looking for if you want this crypto cycle to continue. You still want to see the breakdown below this zone. As I've written over here, the altcoin season will occur actually if you break below this 3.63. So a lot of work to still be done by the bulls. You can vote in the comment section below. There's a poll running right now. What do you think will happen? When do you think crypto could reclaim back into all-time highs? Do you think that it's going to be by the end of Q1 this year? Do you think it's going to be Q2 of this year? Or do you think it's going to be Q3 or later? Let me know. Vote in the poll section. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. We'll revisit that poll towards the end of the live stream. So watching this over here, you can see how it all lines up, right? So if DXY breaks down over here, possibly one more spike up, and generally on a high time frame basis, this should do similar things to what the DXY is doing, right? Bitcoin dominance also trading inversely to what you're seeing over here on the USDT dominance. If USDT dominance spikes up over here, or excuse me, not inversely, trading in unison, if USDT spikes up, Bitcoin dominance should also spike up over here, because that shows fear within the market, and that's usually where Bitcoin holds up well. And again, also massive wick over here, potential wick fill strategy would suggest one more push up to about 62.69%. But this looks very, 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 very likely that would be the top for the Bitcoin dominance. Of course, I can be proven wrong, as I have been at times before, but it looks very, very unlikely that you should take out that high. I do think price could grind up into that region, create more pain for the altcoin sector, and then you would lead to that rejection simultaneously while seeing the same thing on the USDT dominance. And if we go a step further and we look at what's happening on the others chart, which is your altcoin sector measured against Bitcoin. So this is the ratio of others. It's the full altcoin market cap minus the top 10 coins over there, and then measured against Bitcoin as a ratio. You can see the reaction that's coming off of this line, right? There is a reaction that's happening. Remember, every time before that we've hit this, you did put in your altcoin season, right? Even a mini altcoin season, like this time period over here in August 2019, leading up to the 12th of October 2020, that led to a mini altcoin season. And then you had the major altcoin season running from January 2021 all the way to the top over here, which was the end of 2022. So will we get something similar? Only time will tell, right? There is good signs over here to suggest that we should have followed through based on the way that this wick on the weekly is forming. So same thing over here, ETH BTC, putting in a very similar wick to the others measured against Bitcoin over there. We'll keep our eye out on that. And as Benjamin Cowan says over here, if you do look at the ETH BTC ratio and the market cap over there, what you can see is that at the top of the range, that is where the alts topped. And therefore, at the bottom of the range is where you would actually expect altcoins to bottom. So you've now officially come all the way back down into these low regions over here. And as he says, and this is somebody that's very, very, very conservative when it comes to talking about altcoins, he says it was very hard to convince people that it could ever drop this far back down. And then he says over here, this is what I mean by alts are oscillators at best. The key thing now will be to see if ETH BTC can find support soon and change this brutal trend, right? Which if you look at his content, I think he is of the belief that should happen sometime very, very, very soon. Now, at the end of the day, what you need to understand, what you need to know is that as long as the M2 money supply continues to rise towards the upside, generally speaking, you're going to see the S&P 500 move up. Now, as we mentioned over here, if we do get a proper drop in the DXY, that could spike the S&P 500. So the dollar drops over here hard with 3 red candles in a row. That could lead to that continuation down. That could spike the S&P 500 in the short term. But in the high time frame, on the longer term, well, the S&P 500 has just been trending up, right? You can see the blue line over here. And this tracks very, very similarly to what you're seeing with the M2 money supply. As long as the M2 money supply is moving up over here and expanding, this is where the S&P 500 will go up, and hard assets will do very, very well. Things like gold, property, and Bitcoin, right? And if Bitcoin does well, eventually the tides will turn. But we know that the reflexivity of the altcoin sector works best when we see the Fed pivot from essentially quantitative tightening into quantitative easing, which we've seen small signs, but we haven't had the big announcement yet. So you can actually look over here, when the M2 money supply started to drop, that's when the S&P 500 started to drop, and that occurred all the way back in towards the end of 2022, leading into the bottom that occurred over here in April of 2023, and that's where the S&P 500 started to turn a corner, and crypto would have, or Bitcoin at least, would have done the same thing. So looking at when they're going to pivot, well, they're still reducing, right? They're still reducing. You can see over there minus $13.57 billion is the latest read over here on the Federal Reserve's total assets weekly. So this is dropping still pretty significantly, but eventually this will turn a corner because M2 money supply is oftentimes the lead. It leads before this starts to turn that corner. Volume is still rising unbelievably. I can't believe it that daily exchange volume is still rising over here. I definitely would have thought that this would turn down. This has a lot more work to do. Unfortunately, during the live shows, we don't get the update yet. I think there's only updates later on. So you can feel free to go and check it yourself anytime that you want. It is by the block. And this is as per the 4th of February. So we'll see what happens later on today when they do update this, if this does start to turn down or continue its upward trend over there. So gold, very, very strong. As I just mentioned, when the M2 money supply increases over time, hard assets will do very, very well. Gold, property, and Bitcoin. And you can see gold breaking out once again, new all-time highs again, right? Very, very, very strong over there. BTC tends to follow, and eventually crypto will have its day. Now, when Bitcoin does best in terms of the real parabolic advancements where it goes absolutely crazy, like we saw back in 2017 as well as 2021, is actually when you see gold taking a bit of a break. So if gold can start to consolidate following making these all-time highs, it's pretty interesting when you think of it like this, right? So gold ultimately has its run up. Then gold starts to chop about and consolidate, and Bitcoin has its run up. When Bitcoin starts to chop about near the all-time highs and consolidate pre-distribution, that's usually where altcoins have their best run, right? So if you look over here again, gold consolidates, Bitcoin has its parabola. So we are waiting to see if gold can find some sort of a major top and then possibly begin to consolidate, and that can all line up with the Fed actually eventually adding back to their total assets, which I haven't yet done. So food for thought over there, just high time frame stuff that you can look at. Everything's fine on the weekly scale. It would be really good to see this candle turn green on the weekly, especially if it can start to close back towards, around where those previous highs were at 102,500. That will start to look like a bullish, at least a bullish candle over here that would have the propensity to possibly next week break through those highs. As it currently stands, just consolidating, just chopping about over here. We've spoken about this before. Bitcoin has looked fine, despite the big drop over here. It's still caught within the trading range. It's still above all the major levels of support, although they are flattening out, which is something we should pay attention to. That is 89,900. So that's your answer for the weekly scale. If we go onto the daily scale, well, we still have some very, very significant zones over here, right? Very clearly range bound within this environment with the highs where the price put in those local highs at about 106,000, and then on the lows over here at 91,000, defending that level. And we need to see price holding above the high volume area points of control, which we're currently just dropping below. And then we have the question mark, right? Big question mark. Is there going to be a higher low here or not? Well, as long as you're closing above these candles on the left-hand side, on a closing basis, that would be a high low, which makes me think that this is probably going to be a wick low that holds, especially when you look at the massive volume that came in on this wick, right? That was enormous volume over there, which is at least one strong sign. But we need to see in the next couple of days, bulls need to just keep grinding this up. Right now, the strong or the major level to clear is going to be this, right? This is the level to get above. I'll highlight it maybe in a different color. Let's put that in yellow. So that is the level to clear where these previous candles, yesterday's candle open was, and the day before's candle close was. We want to see price getting back above there. Why? Well, this is, of course, continuing this downtrend on a closing basis. It's lower highs. Also, that would get you back above the high volume area. That would also get you back above the mid-range level. And then you have the chance for this to be a high low. So that's the level you want to clear. I'll give you the number. The number over here in the shorter term is $101,523. We want to get above that zone over there to keep the hope alive, right? Also, getting above that zone will simultaneously break you back above the yellow line over here. And your yellow line means that your RSI will trend back towards the upside. That is your pivot level. So that's what you want to see from the bulls. There could be some chop, as mentioned, with the spike in the USDT dominance to capture some of that liquidity, the spike in the Bitcoin dominance as well. You may come and revisit this area, right, which would be as low as about $94,000. That will create a lot more fear, but ultimately, still, this is the zone. We need to get above those candles. That's what getting above those candles means. It means you reclaim the 9 and 18 exponential moving average. They can start to turn back up, and you reclaim the pivot level, which is the yellow line, which means that your RSI on the daily also starts to move back towards the upside. We can have a look. Where is the RSI on the daily? We found a lot of support previously with the major bottoms, by the way, around that 50% level. If you look at all these periods where the psychology was pretty intense, right, you can see over here a lot of those major zones, right? There you got the 50% level for the RSI that led to the move up over here. So still, if you do get the RSI back, right, back up over here within the zone defending this area, this would start to make it look like the possibility of another major high low. So a lot of work needs to be done. We've outlined what the best case scenarios are as well as the worst case scenarios. Keeping it real with you all, this is your best case scenario. Your best case scenario is for Bitcoin to continue to defend the range low at $91,000, which means that it comes down back to just under 95, filling that wick over there with that spike up in USDT dominance, with a spike up in Bitcoin dominance. And if it can defend that level, that's your best case scenario, right? And then you can slowly start to chop out this range and then eventually break out. Your next most likely scenario is that you fail to hold this level, because at the end of the day, this level has been tested multiple times. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, coming in for the 9th time. Eventually you got to call it a day, and there will be some form of capitulation through that level, which you'd find major support anywhere between $78,000 and $85,000, depending on when it happens, because these high time frame moving averages are rising, right? So those are some of the things to look at over there. Either way, looking at it as a major opportunity for the longer term of this crypto cycle, since I'm, of course, not of the belief, which many are, that the cycle is over, right? At least I'm a straight shooter. At least I tell you guys exactly as it is. I know many of the influencers or YouTubers that you might follow on X or on YouTube may beat around the bush. They don't ever want to give you a straight answer. That's my straight answer to you, is that any dips that occur over here are probably going to be longer term opportunities where you will get a second chance for anybody that has missed everything. Now, there's very few things that I'm looking at. I definitely have plans to consolidate my overall portfolio as much as possible. One of the things that I am looking at over here is Hype, simply because it's got extreme relative strength. The fees that they're earning are enormously high, and if you try and fundamentally place this coin, it should fundamentally place, somewhere within the top 10 on CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko as per the fully diluted valuation and the market cap. Now, what I'm viewing over here is, if you look on the 4-hour time frame, it is capped between a low and a high. It's above the previous month's mid-range as well as above the yearly open. Very few coins are above the yearly open. So being above the yearly open is a strong sign. And every single time that we see any sort of a dump by Bitcoin or ETH, when you look at Bitcoin as the main index for the entire crypto market, every time we've had a correction in Bitcoin, ETH drops to a certain level, and each consecutive drop that Bitcoin makes, ETH keeps making lower and lower lows, right? Whereas if you look and you correlate that to what's happened with Hype, every single major correction that's occurred on Bitcoin, you're actually seeing Hype putting in higher and higher lows on each of those major corrections, right? So in terms of relativity, relative to the rest of the market, firstly, this is fundamentally a strong coin. It should be, or at least the project is very, very strong. The platform is strong. So it should be priced much, much higher, at least I believe. And secondly, in terms of technical analysis, it definitely has relative strength because it's been one of the strongest. Every time the market dumps, this coin hardly went down, right? It hardly went down on this dump relative to what the rest of the market did. Also, on top of that, as you can see over here, it's probably the most green coin today, right? So I think it's a good pick. I'm looking at price holding above the yearly open, price above the previous mid-range over here. These are strong signs. Now, it's important that it gains acceptance above these levels, and you can utilize your range levels in two ways, right? One, you can use the previous month's high, the previous month's low, and then the mid-range between that level. So there's the previous month's low, previous month's high, and then you can look at the mid over here, at which point you can say that price is already above the mid-range, which is a sign of strength, right? Or alternatively, you can go into this chart, which I think is a little bit more objective, and it will help you to get a better trigger entry, right? So what I've been looking at over here is I would personally like to see it get above this level, because this is your 50% level, the pink zone, of the entire trading range for Hype with the given history that we have, which is relatively new, right? Also, you have the possibility for a perfect bump and run scenario. You had your lead phase where it broke down, right? You pushed up over here. You had the bump and run, which is the breakout. The bump is the break through that downsloping trend line. You then threw back into the trend line to hold it as support. And now maybe, again, this is a maybe, we need to see, only time will tell. It's all about probabilities and there are no certainties over here, but possibly you could start to put in the run. What's important about this is if you do put in the run phase over here, Hype will simultaneously break above this SR flip region, which is historically, as you can see, significant, right? A big resistance area over here, resistance. So for the first time, you may be flipping this then into support. So it's a coin with relative strength. It's a coin that's fundamentally a little mispriced right now, and it's also misunderstood. So if you can start to get above these levels, and don't get me wrong, this is resistance. This is resistance right now within the zone. But if you can get above this zone over here, it will start to look really, really good. And we want to see it do this. Gain acceptance above here, most specifically get above that 28 zone, right? 28.34. That's going to start to look really, really good. It needs to spend enough time. Now, this won't happen overnight. This will take a couple of days, but keep it on your watch list. If it is something that you're interested in, if you do want to take a trade with something with relative strength, I'm tracking this on the low time frames as well, like the 15-minute time frame, where you can see now the 50 and the 200 EMA have started to upslope, rising towards the upside following the initial downtrend over there. And you're starting to test every single time, holding this as support, and it's constantly slowly grinding up. So what's important about all of this is my expectation would be this: if Bitcoin can somehow in the next week or two reclaim some of these key levels that we've outlined over here, I do expect that Hype will be one of the top performers. And this is the reason that I've started to add this into my portfolio, right? So food for thought. We'll keep an eye on it. Again, I do want to reiterate, this is definitely resistance. And for anyone that, if you're looking for a hedge trade, of course, you can short this, but your stop loss would be above here, reclaiming that, and you flip long over there. So looking at that over there, that's a great trade. What I also want to suggest over here is for anyone out there that, is struggling, you're not alone. Why you're not alone? Well, you can actually read from some of the pros out there, some of the pro traders. Great tweet over here from Cold-Blooded Chiller, right? He says the volatility we're experiencing at the moment is extreme. These price swings are significant, right? You can actually measure this and prove that it's significant. ETH gets more than 7% moves around once a week, typically, which is sustained over multiple days. And that we're now experiencing around 11 more than 7% moves in the last 4 days. So big whipsaw effects, right? What that means is if you're inexperienced, you are going to get wrecked. Try not to win it back all in one trade, as the saying goes, but rather sit on your hands and allow price action to digest the current move towards the downside and show you what should be coming next, right? So he says over here, do not let your mind fool you into this being an opportunity to make it all back. The action is aggressive and punishing. Think about the negatives of losing more capital versus the clouded positive outcome of clawing back portfolio drawdown, right? The reality is there's simply too much to handle in these moves for the vast majority of participants. Don't make your situation more of a struggle by overtrading higher degrees of volatility, right? When there's higher volatility, you should decrease your risk, right? How do you decrease your risk? Take smaller position sizes on trades that you're taking and reduce the leverage. If there's any, if there's ever a point in time in the markets in general, whether it's now 3 months from now or 30 years from now, where your emotions are going absolutely all over the place and, you just can't handle it. You can't control your emotions. It literally comes down to one thing and one thing only, and that is you have too much risk on the table, which means you either over leverage on a single position which is about to be liquidated, or alternatively, your position size is absolutely enormous, right? Way too big. When it comes to trading, there's a saying that I've also learned over the years, which is that if you weren't able to laugh off the last loss, you were trading too big. That's basically what it comes down to. So, that's the main message for today. I think is control your risk. Look for coins that have relative strength. And as the market tries to reprice things and reshuffle from losers into winners, try and pick the winners. At least I think this is going to be one of the winners over here is Hype. I was asked the question yesterday in Whale Room. We do live Zooms. By the way, if you do want to join into Whale Room, there's a link in the description below. Also, I forgot to mention, if you do want to purchase Hype, there is also a link over here for BitGet. You get 10% off of your spot and futures trading fees. They are one of the few exchanges that actually list Hype, right? Very few exchanges seem to have Hype, which is why I say, not too many people know about it yet. So I think there's still an opportunity over there. You can use the link over there. And then again, going back to the Discord, there is a link over here if you do want to join. We're discussing on the Zoom. Someone asked me, what would your top 3 picks be? Right now, I would say my top 3 picks would be Solana, Hype, and Sui in terms of the majors. So not going too high risk or anything like that. Those would probably be the ones that I'm looking at. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you all on the next one. I hope you have an absolutely stellar day and stay safe out there. And I'll catch you on tomorrow's show. Cheers for now.